This one goes out to me as mom. I just want to say thank you for listening. I do apologize for my bad mouth. I will try my best to change it up a little bit.
Wash it out with soap.
Sincerely, Bel,
And Myra.
And
I think I'm also guilty.
And me. I'm no saint here.
No saint.
I mean,
No
but we do
saint.
know I'm the worst, and that's okay. That's okay.
She listened to the last one and she was like, it was so lovely to have Bel on the podcast, but there was so much swearing.
I'm from Worcester. I'm an Italian. I'm trying my best.
Okay, well, since we've disclaimed and we're back, I want to talk to you guys about one of the most well-known artists of all time, an artist with grit, cutting wit, and a raw sense of self that she captures through unapologetic self-portraits over decades.
Okay, grit, cutting wit. I
Yeah.
love that.
I'm on the edge of my seat already.
Yep. Born a child of Mexico's revolutionary decade, inherently linked to the earth and the culture of Coyoacan, it is Frida Kahlo. Woo!
Killed the pronunciation.
Yes.
That was good.
I said this like I was in front of my mirror for 4 hours just saying Coyoacan. I did that a lot. So hopefully I won't butcher too badly, but please correct me. gildedeyepodcast@gmail.com. To prepare for this episode, I read the book Frida, a biography of Frida Kahlo by Hayden Herrera, which was eventually adapted into a film with Salma Hayek, which I have not seen yet, but I think we'll do a movie night sometime.
Very
Just to
soon.
see Salma Hayek, to be honest. Very soon, Salma Hayek.
She looks
Love
like
her.
she kills it in this role. I've only seen like one clip on friggin' Instagram.
When did it come out?
Oh, that's
It's like a little while ago.
Does everyone know what you're saying when you mean mentat?
No, but I'm hoping that I'll do it enough that people will catch on.
I don't know what it means.
It's a Dune reference.
Okay, so the movie was from 2002, so it's been a hot second. It's been like
22 years.
22.
Ugh, that's crazy.
Crazy. But yeah, the book itself, like maybe more has surfaced since its release date.
in
I
that
tried my
time.
best to cross-reference, but again, I want to do her story justice. So if I do make mistakes or people want to reach out, we can correct things on our Instagram or next episode, because this is our very first two-parter, which is so exciting. Yeah. So Frida Kahlo chose her own birth year, 1910, the same year of the outbreak of the Mexican Revolution. Despite actually being born in 1907, she decided that she and modern Mexico would be born together.
That is phenomenal and also slightly comical, I think.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what do you mean?
It's like the same thing when I say, like, I was born in 1999, but I was actually born in 1776 at the dawn of America.
So good.
Writing your own narrative.
Me and George go way back.
I guess it's the difference between, like, it's only 3 years, so it's kind of convenient for her. So from childhood, Frida was very boisterous and confident. She was her father's favorite daughter out of 4, which is kind of a big feat for her, I would say. Guillermo Kahlo, her father, was a successful architectural photographer granted commissions by the Mexican government, which was also a real feat since he was born in Germany to Hungarian Jews and moved to Mexico when he was 19.
What's up with the name?
He changed his name.
Oh.
He came over when he was 19 and then changed his name. He had a German name before.
That is
I
a very
did not write down.
grabbable mustache.
Right?
Yeah, we do have visual slides. As always, you can watch along on youtube.com.gov.
.org.
He's kind of handsome.
He is. He's dashing.
He's dashing. The mustache is phenomenal.
Looks good on him, yeah.
Yeah. Guillermo built the Kahlo family home 3 years before Frida was born, and this is the house that would eventually become the Frida Kahlo Museum later on, but we will get there when we get there. His second wife, Matilde Calderon, was Frida's mother. Matilde was the oldest of 12 children with enormous dark eyes. And
12?
12.
12?
They did it different back then.
Oh my
Imagine
God.
popping out 12 kids.
Imagine
I feel
having
like you'd be,
11 siblings.
Like,
Ugh.
My sense of self would be warped.
I don't think you would have one at that point.
Well, Frida says that her mother was like a little belle from Oaxaca who gracefully cinched her waist and carried her basket coquettishly to market.
That's a very specific description.
Yeah.
That's how I want to be at the farmer's market.
I know, it's very cute.
Coquettishly.
I feel like she was a very pious young woman. The whole town loved her. There was no question why Guillermo was attracted to her, but people wondered why she even gave him the time of day at all, because he was not a native Mexican. He was a self-proclaimed atheist. He had very big ears, and he suffered from seizures. So
Wow.
the whole town was kind of like...
I love that the ears are noted. She
Yes.
was like, you know what? Mustache,
ears. She also historically liked German men because her first boyfriend was also German. Well, anyway, she thought that he had very romantic eyes, so that could be... I think that she just liked him. So she was the one who convinced Guillermo to take up photography in the first place, and he took to it very naturally. He was eventually granted the title of First Official Photographer of Mexico's Cultural Patrimony. He photographed only structures and landscapes and did not like capturing people, as he did not want to improve what God had made ugly.
Period.
Ooh.
So, but he did sometimes do portraits for like commission or something like that. But he told Frida over and over again, like, it's not my business.
These people are busted. Not my problem.
Guillermo had 2 other daughters, Frida's half-sisters, with his first wife, who had died in childbirth. Frida was originally born as Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo y Calderon. Her name was originally spelled with an E in the middle, so Frieda, but she eventually changed it later on to distance herself from German culture as, like, things got a bit sticky
Something
later in
happened?
life. Oh, yeah.
Something big? Did I miss something? I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, like, you know, world wars and whatnot. And as she grew up, people would introduce her as Carmen instead of Frida, because, like, everybody just wanted to nobody wanted to be associated with that culture
They were like,
at the time.
Yikes.
Yeah. So Frida and her younger sister Christina were raised primarily by their 2 older sisters, Matilde and Adriana. Their older half-sisters, Maria Luisa and Margarita, who had been placed in a convent after Guillermo remarried, would tune in whenever they were around. Matilde taught her daughters how to sew, embroider, cook, clean, and tried her very best to get them all on the religion boat that she herself adored. Of all of the daughters, Frida and Christina, who she called the chubby one, did not buy it. They had like a cute sister relationship where they would like fight and then make up and then love each other dearly, but then also say, Mom and Dad found you in a trash can. You're not my real sibling. The family was really trying to be this very devout family. So before all of the meals, they would like pray a lot and they would go to church. And Frida and Christy would look at each other over the table and like start giggling furiously, like during the prayer. And then in religion class, they would sneak out and like run into an orchard and eat apples from the orchard. Like they just weren't about it. And they were like little buddies in their
heresy.
Disobedience.
Their
heresy. So Frida was very quick to emotion. When Christy and Frida went to their kindergarten class together, Frida was so amazed by their first teacher that during a lesson about the sun and the universe, she became so overwhelmed that she pissed herself in class.
Real.
Like fully
She got so excited about the universe.
Good for
she was
her.
like, this is crazy, guys.
She felt the power surging of the universe.
Truly. And they made her, the school, because she was obviously needed new clothes, they had her wear pants lended to her from a girl who lived across the street. And for some reason, this birthed a weird hatred on Frida's end for this girl. So there's a quote about this where Frida says, "One day I brought her near my house and began to strangle her.
What?
Her tongue was already out of her mouth when a baker passed by and freed her from my hands."
What the fuck? Sorry, Mia's mom. What the frick?
Yeah, so she tended to exaggerate her evil deeds in this way a little bit, like for humor's sake. She was like, yeah, you know, I was mad at this girl, so I decided to murder her in cold blood. But she was very much a prankster. She was like,
hee hee ha ha.
Yeah.
Choked to death.
Yeah.
You know?
And honestly, yeah, there's some stories here where I'm like, that's a little bit intense. When she entered the National Preparatory School of Mexico, she became a real menace in the school. She had this group of people who were all, for lack of a better term, like delinquents. Like they would do pranks. They would run around the halls.
She's so cool. She was born with Mexico.
She was born with Mexico.
I love her.
It was like she was the leader of this group, or like
course
part of the leadership of the group. So this group rode a donkey through the halls one time.
Oh my God. Need.
Let's go. There was one time where they unleashed a dog in the school, and they had wrapped the dog in fireworks, and they started setting off the fireworks.
That's horrible.
I know. I was like, that's kind of
That's
a lot.
Step over
That's
the
a bit
line.
much. And then there was an account, too, of they once lit a 6-inch firecracker above the head of one of their professors just because they thought that he was boring. They were like, this guy has to...
This'll liven it up, certainly.
This'll liven it up. And it's a very comical scene of this professor being very boring in class. The firecracker fucking detonates above his head, shrapnel and debris, and the windows shatter. Like, it's a big
my God.
explosion.
Oh, wow. It's a bomb.
It's a bomb.
They set off a bomb.
Basically.
Like, this is so boring, guys. We need a bomb.
Like, guys, somebody has to rattle it up.
Hold
Come
on, guys. I have
I
something
know,
that'll
we'll make it
liven this up. Here's my bomb.
Yeah. And the professor just kind of like smoothed he shook off the debris and just kept
Being boring.
monotone talking. He did not even acknowledge it.
At least he's
He
consistent.
serves.
At least he's consistent.
I know.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Truly. I just pictured it as like a block of TNT from Minecraft. Just like from her
That's what I pictured too. I'm
so sorry.
picturing the professor not even batting one little eyelash.
It's like a daily occurrence.
Also, he's certainly bald. Like, I have
Yes.
such a vision for him.
Yes, no glasses, just like this
Yeah.
regular bald man with like a pointer. You know?
he just like he's quiet just while the
And so
in the 15th
Yeah.
So this group was also a political one. They would wear caps to subvert the dress codes of the day. So they were very kind of like, they were radical and new and young.
You're
and,
like, guys, fuck the system.
yeah,
We
let's
just invented
explode
that.
our teachers. Yeah, it was insane. Despite being part of this group, she was very smart, and she would read her father's books and was very intrigued by like history and art and all of this stuff. So she was very well read, but she just wasn't a dedicated student. She would skip class, but still managed to get extremely high grades. So she was just one of those lucky few who could read a book one time and then just remember everything. Frida's first life-changing event happened when she was just 7 years old. So while other kids in this key moment of social development, while they were getting to know each other and talking and socializing, Frida was inside with polio. She had gotten polio as a child. And it was very painful for her. She had searing chronic pain down her right leg.
Oh my God.
And when she did eventually recover, her leg remained very small and like kind of weak and withered compared to her other leg. And she was very self-conscious about it for the rest of her life.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, no.
This entire story is a story about a beautiful artist, but it's also about all of the medical failings that followed and plagued her throughout her entire life. So upon reintroduction to society and to her classmates and everything at this young age, she became very isolated and withdrawn. It was a moment of self-awareness. Like, she kind of became self-aware and understood her place in a group. And it was a visible change. It was a noticeable change in her personality.
How old was she? I'm sorry.
She was 7.
When she got polio?
Yes.
Jesus, that's really young to be like,
so
I know.
I'm
bad.
gonna die.
Yeah.
People all know who I am. That's crazy.
And this event too, it triggered something in her brain, and she coped with this fear and with this pain of being different from other kids and like having this fear of death and everything at such an early age. She created a parallel world in her mind that she could dissociate into to escape the real world. And she created an imaginary friend, a second Frida, who knew her completely. This is the origin of the two Fridas, which is a visual motif and character that would appear over and over again in her artworks. So basically, she could not live fully to her fullest extent at this moment. So she created a version of herself that existed in her mind, and that she would
It's like
bring
a coping
to life
mechanism
through art.
Through that, yeah.
Yeah. So Guillermo, girl dad Kahlo, persuaded Frida to take up sports in order to strengthen her weak leg. This was very unusual for a girl at the time. She played soccer, boxed, wrestled, and became a champion swimmer.
What?
Despite this, her leg remained skinny. But Guillermo was extremely proud of her. He loved her. He didn't spare much time for anyone except Frida.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. He taught her about things that he was interested in, like photography and painting. The two went out often to paint watercolors of nature and specimens, which Frida would collect and study under a microscope. The two were also bound by their illnesses. So he would have seizures. He had epilepsy. He was often sick, and she had polio at a young age. So they sort of bonded over their health issues and like became pillars for each other throughout
kind of
their
sweet.
lives.
That's so sweet.
It's sad but sweet. She got to know him in ways that most of his other family members and people didn't. Most people remembered him as an industrious man who never knew rest, and she was the only one who ever described him as tranquil. So she was able to see a softer side of him, I think. When Frida was about 14 and attending the preparatory school, so the school where she was being a menace.
Yeah.
And that's when they set their professor on fire?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just getting the timeline.
They exploded him, actually.
Post polio, she was still boisterous. She still had that.
Yeah,
thing.
she had a moment where she was recuperating, and
then she was like, "Wait,
compartmentalized.
guys."
Yeah, she was like, "It's me.
I'm
LOL.
her.
I was born with
forget?
Mexico.
That's me for real."
Hello.
When she was at the preparatory school, painters arrived to carry out a big mural project. They had a big setup. So they had scaffolding and paints, and there was lots of spectacle surrounding their big project. Frida and her entourage deemed them perfect targets for their chaos. So they would light piles of wood chips on fire underneath their scaffolding.
Oh my God.
And they picked on them to the point where the painters started carrying around pistols in self-defense.
Pistols?
Yeah, it
They're
was a
gonna
lot.
shoot these 13-year-old girls they were like, guys, can you stop lighting our stuff on fire?
Guys, we're trying to work.
I'll shoot you with a gun.
Frida's favorite painter to pick on was a muralist named Diego Rivera.
Shut the fuck up.
Way.
Yup.
No. No way.
At this time, Diego Rivera was about 36 years old.
No.
I'm slack-jawed.
Ew.
Yep, and married to Lupe Marin, one of his models. He was an international superstar artist already in a Stetson hat and baggy clothes. Frida would sneak into the amphitheater to steal his lunch every day, and she even soaped up the staircase he frequently used in order to get him to fall down the stairs, but he never did. But do you know who did? The professor that they blew up.
He can't catch a break.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Diego is, throughout history, to this day, described as frog-like, with a wide face and frumpy demeanor. People thought that Diego was pot-bellied, filthy, and terrible looking. But Frida, for some reason, had a big crush on him. Since she was...
Victim.
Frida, since she was 14, told her friends that all she wanted to do was have a baby with him.
What?
Which is like, I don't know what. If you see a photo of this man, tell me you understand. I don't understand.
What?
Yeah, it's insane. Nothing happened between them during this time, but he did have some off-kilter like quotes about this time, like after they were. So Diego Rivera, for those who don't know, Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo were this very famous artist couple, and they did eventually wed, and we'll get there in the story. But after they get married, he kind of looks back on this time when they first met, and he was like, yeah, like she was a child, but she had the body of a woman.
What?
Yeah. So it was pretty gross.
Is he dead?
Oh, God.
I think so. Yeah.
He's
we should
gotta
kill
be
him.
Dead. If he's not dead,
We should kill him.
personally, why are you thinking
we're- okay.
36?
We haven't done this in a while, our asshole
Asshole
scale. So just off the bat,
Off the
10.
bat, we're clocking in at 10.
we're
10.
clocking in at evil, horrible. And
Evil,
it
evil
will probably,
12.
get worse as we go.
No way.
This whole episode is just going to be flaming Diego Rivera.
Good.
So anyway, despite Frida's attraction to Diego, she had a more age-appropriate boyfriend who was still a few years older, but it was a little more age-appropriate than Diego, named Alejandro. He was also part of their little entourage group, and Frida was not shy about expressing her feelings and wants to him. They have a lot of letters and quotes from the book from her to him, and it was she just poured her heart all the time through language and written word. She and Alejandro, on September 17th, 1925, on a gray day, they were taking the bus together, and Frida's life was about to change forever.
How old was she at this point?
She was 18 years old at this time.
It's like about to graduate high school kind of vibe.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a quote that Frida either wrote or spoke at some point. We had taken another bus, but since I had lost a little parasol, we got off to look for it, and that was how we happened to get on the bus that destroyed me.
Destroyed me?
So as their bus turned onto a new street, an electric trolley car barreled through it. Alejandro and Frida both describe this as feeling rather slow, a slow compression of the bus until it shattered underneath the pressure of this trolley car. A handrail went right through Frida.
What?
Inside one side of her pelvis and out the other.
Oh
so
my
it
God.
Skewered her.
Oh my God.
Alejandro was relatively okay compared to Frida's injuries, and after the initial crash, he went to look for her. And this is a quote from him in the book. Something strange had happened. Frida was totally nude. The collision had unfastened her clothes. Someone on the bus, probably a house painter, had been carrying a packet of powdered gold. This package broke, and the gold fell all over the bleeding body of Frida.
Wow.
Whoa.
Which is the most insane visual.
That's an insane picture. Like, what?
Wow.
It feels like a divine
Yeah.
moment. Like, this is what created
So
Frida Kahlo
poetic.
as
Yeah.
we
Chills.
know her. I know, me too.
Like, this is a
Goosebumps
horrible
up the
thing. I don't mean
wazoo.
to, like,
Yeah.
deify a person being struck through by a bus.
Right,
but
absolutely not. But like,
some people are just made to be here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, made to be known.
Yeah.
divinely ordained.
For sure.
Wow. I have chills, like, literally everywhere.
So while they were waiting for the Red Cross to come, this really grinds my gears that this happened. A random man decided to wrench the handrail out of her. He was like, oh no, this can't, this will help. And he just fully, I said, that's the last thing you're supposed to do if someone is
Yeah,
like,
it's supposed to stay
don't know-
in or else the bleeding will...
You also don't know what you're doing.
you don't know
Yeah.
what you're doing. It was a random guy.
It's through, so
Not
is it
at all
through her
sterile, like...
No.
Was it this, like, sideways, horizontal, or through the front?
It's
do you
going to be
think?
squeamish if I tell you.
No,
it's gonna
please.
be
Actually, I'm
squeamish.
gonna pass out. Don't tell me. I'm really bad with that stuff. Don't tell me, actually.
I was
No,
reading.
don't.
I cut out a lot. If you're interested in learning specifics about her accident and the specific injuries that do occur, you can read the book or look it up online.
Okay.
But I did cut things out because it made me very squeamish.
Yeah.
So, but it was not good. It really destroyed her entire like reproductive system. Specifically,
I knew
it
it.
was horrifying. It was really horrifying.
I knew that's what you were gonna say, and I was really hoping it wasn't that.
It
'cause-
was it's even just the words on paper without any diagrams or anything, visceral, horrifying to read about. So anyway, the Red Cross did finally come, and it was uncertain if she would live. A friend said that they had to put her back together in sections as if they were making a photo montage. The problem with this is that the hospital or place that she was staying to recuperate sent her home after like 1 month when she should have been there for like a year.
Yeah.
She had the amount of injuries that she had were astounding. So they just kind of bandaged her up and were like, okay, go heal. And she needed to be under surveillance.
Medical surveillance.
And yes,
Yeah.
it was. So when she did heal, it was very botched. Like she healed in a way that caused her chronic pain for the
my
rest of her
God.
life. Yeah. It was
is
not sustainable.
horrifying.
Yeah.
More
Next
people to
episode, it's going to get worse. In her letters to Alejandro while she was recovering, she said that she was beginning to grow accustomed to suffering, which is just so sad.
Oh my
That's
God.
awful.
And what makes all this worse is that while Frida was stuck in bed rest at her family home, Alejandro was growing distant. There's a theory that he might have found out about an affair that Frida had with a friend of her father's at the factory, which is horrifying in and of
What?
itself.
I'm so sorry.
So she
Pause.
yeah, she had gotten a job with her father's friend at like a factory of some kind. And, you know, obviously same age as her father. Like there was a rumor that maybe they were like having an affair, which, you know, modern day we can look back at that and say, oh, she was groomed and taken advantage of or whatever.
Right.
People her age, like her boyfriend and whatever, their friend group kind of found out about this and started icing
like,
her. They were
oh.
like, you're weird and also that's gross.
That's
oh,
awesome.
and you're bedridden and healing?
Sorry about your pelvis.
Yeah, everyone just kind
Lol.
of
Lol.
iced her. It was really,
Raffle.
it was horrible. And so in order to win Alejandro back, she painted one of her very first portraits.
She looks
that
stunning.
one?
Yeah, it's
What the
Portrait
hell?
in a Velvet Dress for Alejandro. She created this, and it's this really, she made herself look very feminine and beautiful and soft and delicate. It's sort of to allure this young man back to her. She created this, and it worked, honestly.
He was like, damn, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
He accepted the
beautiful.
painting.
It's stunning.
Yeah, and this is an example of her painting her other self. So somebody that she was trying to embody. So it's one of her first explorations of that other self. Alejandro went back to her and cherished the painting. Later on, though, after a long trip to Europe and tumultuous letters back and forth, Alejandro did officially end their relationship. But they actually do
They're
stay
like friends.
forever,
Oh, that's
which is
nice.
which
That's
is
cute.
kind of nice.
Okay, okay.
And he's a big champion of her work. So I think that he knew that they were not compatible in a relationship.
Just like a little teeny
Yeah.
bopper moment.
I did read some of the letters that she was writing to him during this time, and it was a little bit overwhelming because she was like, I'm dying and you're everything to me, and if you leave me, then I have nothing. Like it was it was a bit of pressure to put on another person. So I understand why it's
Right.
why it wasn't sustainable, but it is nice that they remained close for forever.
Her nipples are so pronounced in this.
Breast as allegory.
Breast.
We're going to
are
be
her
talking
nipples?
about that. Yeah, they're a bit high. But,
Yeah, they're a bit high.
you know, who's to say that?
sitting,
Perky?
Sitting
Good
pretty.
for her, I guess.
She's like, other Frida has great boobs.
Other Frida
This
has
Frida.
porn star titties.
Her life from then on was one of chronic pain, just constantly. It was really horrible. A close friend described her as a woman who lived dying. She had at least 32 medical operations from childhood to 1951. Her pain did not stem only from the initial accident, but also medical incompetence just over and over and over again until the day that she died.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like women's health especially, they didn't start taking seriously until like last year.
Not at all.
Like, not even
not at
last
all. Yeah, and she would write letters to doctors and friends who were doctors and say like, I'm going crazy. Like, why can't anybody help me? It was
so
just
sad.
as it was just as mentally destructive because
right. to go through that, to
Yeah.
endure that over and over again.
Because when
To
you're
no avail.
constantly disappointed in that way and your body is failing you and everyone else around you is failing you, you're like, what's wrong with me? So it's horrible. So because her accident forced her into a more sedentary lifestyle, she did begin to paint more. She took a lot of inspiration from books that she liked, such as like Botticelli, Bronzino, Modigliani. So her portraits from the get-go took on the form of magical talismans. It's a way for her to project her true self onto a canvas to live outside of her body. So it was almost a ritual for her to compartmentalize, for her to keep living, for her to like not fall into this deep, dark depression and to feel like she had an escape through these magical paintings. There's a quote from the book. She created a person who could be mobile and make mischief in her imagination rather than with her own two legs.
She's so good.
She's really
Did she take any lessons?
This is all self-taught, or her dad kind of as well?
She had base painting and color theory lessons from her dad through watercolor, but a lot of what she learned was through books. So she would study old masters and
Learn that way.
yeah, she was very self-taught. Another friend said that Frida is the only painter who gave birth to herself, which I thought
I
was
love that.
so insane.
That is such a compliment.
So when Frida was about 20 or 22, she was reintroduced to Diego Rivera,
No.
who at
How?
that point he was 41 years old.
Ugh.
Yes. And he
Oh,
He's literally disgusting.
I know. Yeah. She's stunning and young and amazing, and she was just very intrigued
this
by
is
him.
a form of self-harm, I think.
True. I think so. Yeah. And Diego was also
Did he treat her
insufferable.
well? Yeah.
He kind of didn't treat her, period. He was very neglectful. He was very much, this is what I'm doing. This is my destiny. I am a great artist, and that is my, like, I'll get to you when I get to you. So by this point, Diego was a neurotic muralist, prolific for the speed and lengths that he would go to ride out his spontaneous bursts of inspiration. So when he painted, he was a muralist. So when he painted murals, crowds would gather underneath him to watch him do this crazy dance of like paint and colors on these walls.
Wow.
He was very fast. He was incredible. He was an amazing painter.
Unfortunately incredible.
Unfortunately, he was brilliant and incredible. And he was famous for like representing and bringing the Mexican culture like everywhere he went. There's a quote from him. I am not merely an artist, but a man performing his biological function of producing paintings, just as a tree produces flowers and fruit. And he has this exact same sentiment for a lot of different things. And we'll get to that
Uncomfortable.
eventually.
I can only imagine what you're going to say about that. That's disgusting.
So when Diego was 3, he began drawing all over the walls in his childhood home. So his father created a blackboard-lined room where he could go crazy bananas on that thing. Before he met Frida, he was married to and had 2 young daughters with Lupe Marin, a famous model. Their relationship was tumultuous and violent. Diego, though objectively ugly, was known to have had many affairs throughout every single one of his relationships. Women flocked to him because he was very powerful and like rich sometimes. Sometimes he had no money, sometimes he had a lot, because that's the life of a commission artist. But he had this same sentiment of like, I'm just doing my biological function. That's what he felt about sex.
He would say about having affairs.
Yeah, where he's like, I'm just a man. Like, this is what I do. This is
some
the
men
curse.
Still say that.
Naturally, your body,
in nature, alphas have access to all of the females.
Yeah, and it's just to see him. He's like a whirlwind of pain around every single woman that he touches in his life. Is just eventually is miserable.
R.I.P. Diego Rivera. You would have loved Andrew Tate.
Yeah, he's. So during their first
Sorry.
I was writing this. When I was writing this script, my hands were shaking.
So mad.
I was getting it's infuriating. Okay.
You would have loved country trap music.
You will not believe. Okay. So their first reintroduction meeting was under a project that Diego was working on. So from up on the scaffolding, he heard a voice call up asking him to come down. Frida, the girl he recognized from the preparatory school years before, was there to ask his advice about her paintings. So he came down, he looked at her portraits, he really liked them. That's the one thing that I will say about Diego Rivera is that he loved Frida. He thought that she was a creative genius. And not in the way where it's like, my wife does art sometimes.
Yeah, like not infantilizing. He's like, oh, she is.
Yes. He genuinely thought that she was a genius.
And he's right.
Yeah. And he would always, he would introduce her as such. He would be like, Frida is making paintings that no man has ever made before.
Was she famous at this point?
No.
Or?
No. She was just making them in her family home when she's recovering from illness. So she just has some paintings and she knows that, yeah, she's a fan of Diego. And so he says, he's like, oh, these are really good. Why don't I come over on Sunday and check out your studio and you can make a painting before. And so he starts going over every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
A lot.
Blah.
And he didn't even think it was awkward at all when they started a romantic relationship in her family's home.
Right.
Yeah. And the rest of her family were like, why are you with this man? So her father was actually the only supportive one because he wanted to pay off their mortgage. Oh. And he was like, I see the golden path.
True. Leto Atreides for real.
Yeah.
He said, get the
bag.
Bread.
Yeah.
Get that bread, girl.
So
bread.
He gave her like a pat on the back and said, yep.
And Frida was genuinely very in love with and interested in Diego. She was interested in his mind. Like, it's one of those where she was kind of like, he's so brilliant and I want to be the one to be with this powerful man. Her father was the only one to attend their wedding.
Oh.
The rest of their family and friends considered the union as one of between an elephant and a dove.
True.
Their marriage was like a union of lions. She admired Diego even when she hated him, but they were two pillars linked together through the love of art and character. They were two very self-directed people, though Frida was obsessed with the idea of caring for Diego in any way that she could. So they were two very independent people, but Frida was way more devoted to him than he ever was or would be of her. Do you want to hear some nicknames that they had for each other?
Like, yeah.
So much.
So she called him Frog Toad.
Oh.
All of the time.
No,
like,
she did not.
My little toad,
True
my
and
little
real.
frog. She loved how ugly he was. He called her child of my soul and little one, which was odd. He liked to...
My grandpa calls me that.
So after their marriage, Frida began to dress in traditional Tijuana attire as a way to reinvent herself. She enjoyed this style of dress because it was seen as very stately, beautiful, sensuous, intelligent, brave, and strong-looking.
True.
Sometimes she mixed and matched items of clothing from different eras, places, and time periods. Curating her outfits was always a very serious affair for her, and down to the last minute, she was like stitching actively on her clothing or adding ribbons or combs to her hair. It was very involved. She also dressed this way to please Diego, who loved this style of dress.
He was like, slay.
I was laughing, not because I think it's ridiculous, but because I was just picturing, like, Myra getting ready, and this is what she thinks she's doing, but in reality, she's just late. Just, like, the same 3 shirts.
Gagged me right now.
In reality, she's just late to wherever she's going.
So occasionally, Frida painted her costume or clothing void of any body as a sort of second skin that was more true to herself than her physical form. So her body didn't represent her as much as she felt her clothing did, because she could control that. It had more autonomy in a way.
That resonates, I think.
Yeah. She and Diego moved to San Francisco for one of Diego's gigs when he was painting the Allegory of California at the Stock Exchange there. While Frida was there, she learned that she really did not care much for white people, as they were boring and all have faces like unbaked rolls, especially the old women.
You guys look like dough.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
In San Fran, she befriended a thoracic surgeon named Leo Eloser, Eloeser, I don't know how you say that name, whose medical advice she would ask for the rest of her life. So he was like her rock when she was trying to figure out what was going on in her body. This guy was kind of a weird character, too. At midnight, he would depart from his office on a sailboat to Red Rock Island and sail back down the next morning. So that was his commute. And he was a talented viola player as well. Nobody knew when he slept or, like, you know, when he wasn't sailing or anything. And Frida painted a portrait of him to show her gratitude for his general character and help throughout her life. She also met Lucien Bloch at this time, who at first she hated because she thought that Lucien was flirting with Diego. But in reality, she was just like a cool person who liked both Frida and Diego's vibes and just wanted to like be a part of it. Mm-hmm. So she ended up being one of Diego's studio assistants down the line. So Frida and Diego began to travel around America for displays and exhibitions of Diego's work. He showed at the MoMA, where Frida stuck close to his side in her vibrant dress.
Wow.
They also went to Detroit, which Frida absolutely hated. She hated Detroit. She said, "Although I am very interested in all of the industrial and mechanical development of the United States, I find that Americans completely lack sensibility and good taste."
Period.
And she called Detroit specifically ugly and stupid.
Well, a little insensitive in this day and age, but, you know.
Diego, on the other hand, adored Detroit. He loved the city and he loved industry, and he was so excited to go there and paint machines and mechanisms and things like that. He was working at an insane pace, leaving Frida alone for long, long spans at a time in a city that she was not comfortable in. And at this time, she was 2 months pregnant.
Oh.
She got pregnant?
It was very anxiety-inducing for her because she had had one abortion before this. She had gotten pregnant, and the medical professionals in Mexico basically told her, "You will not be able to carry this baby to term because of your accident." In Detroit, doctors were encouraging her to carry out the pregnancy, mostly because at this time abortion is illegal. She talked to Dr. Eloser about it, asking his advice, but eventually she was like, she always wanted kids. She wanted to be a mom so bad. So she was like, I'm going to stick it out and we're going to see if it works. The doctors are kind of hopeful. I think it could work out.
In America, they're not going to encourage her to get rid of a pregnancy regardless if it's medically feasible or not.
Not at all. Yeah. And even though she knew that Diego would never really be there to support her through this, because he's not there during the pregnancy and he's made it very clear that, like, if you have a baby, that's your thing. Like, that's...
Wow. He's like, I'm so famous.
He's like, I have work to do, though, so I'll be around, but, like, not while I'm working. And he's always working. Mm-hmm. So, so he does not care for her at all during this time because this is very hard on her. Pregnancy period is just very hard and rough on her physical state. And in 1932, she did lose her baby. She was rushed to the hospital and remained there for 13 days.
Oh my God.
It was a big, big deal. She was...
How far along?
She was 3.5 months pregnant when she lost her baby. And she was entirely miserable. She didn't know what was truly wrong with her because she was hearing different things from different doctors. Right. She was never getting a straight answer.
No consistency. And
she really wanted children. She never knew if she'd be able to have them. So she channeled her despair through dry humor and art. She wanted to draw her child at the exact moment when she miscarried. And she begged the hospital for a book of medical illustrations, and they refused to give it to her. Diego then tried to plead with them. He said, "You are not dealing with an average person here. Like, she's a real artist.
Period.
And she should, yeah. And when he was also denied, he bought her a book himself. Which is kind of a W.
Yeah, that is a W.
Rare Diego W.
Rare Diego W. For real.
9.5 right now.
He gets 0.5 of being a decent person for, like, encouraging her art in that one book.
Yeah, for real. Henry Ford Hospital is the name of this painting. It is a raw, bloody self-portrait that made her one of the most original painters of her time. Diego says, Frida began working on a series of masterpieces which had no precedent in the history of art, paintings which exalted the feminine qualities of endurance and truth, reality, cruelty, and suffering. Never before had a woman put such agonized poetry on canvas as Frida did at this time in Detroit.
Wow.
So in this painting, Henry Ford Hospital, she references medical illustration books, but still took her own path while visually describing what the insides of a woman look like. The unflattering view of her, swollen and bleeding, was radically different from how men depicted women in times of trauma and pregnancy at this time. She holds 6 red ribbons in her hands on which balance items with meaning. One is a fetus. In this context, the ribbon represents the umbilical cord still linking them eternally. There's also a snail, which represents the slow reality of miscarriage. Frida related to the snail because it was soft, covered, and at the same time open. Underneath the bed, there is a piece of strange machinery that has historically been open to interpretation. Nobody truly knows what this is. Some think that it represents her hips. The machine, no matter what it is, links to something very ominous. Frida hated anything mechanical. She hated Detroit and the industrial aspects of America that Diego found interesting and captivating. This might have been her expressing a sense of self-hatred, equating herself to a machine unable to perform its function. We see her hatred for machines as well in Self-Portrait on the Borderline between Mexico and the United States, where she directly compares the rich life and cultural history of Mexico with America.
Wow.
Whoa. This is one of my favorite paintings by her.
The book has a quote that says, "It was a machine that had mowed Frida down in her 1925 accident. It was in Motor City that she lost her child, and it was machinery that took Diego away from her for so many hours when she was in Detroit." She longed to return to Mexico, and she contextualizes this scene in a vast natural plain under a blue sky. She writes, "Earth to me is Mexico, people around and everything, so it was a help to me when I had nothing to put the earth around me." In this borderland through the United States, you see the comparison of like Mexico as a rich landscape with history, and America has, instead of roots going into the ground, there's wires and mechanism, and it's stark. And she just places herself right in the middle to show that she's sort of
in the sky, and then there's just
smog,
the flag.
Yeah,
her rendering is pretty amazing.
Like the Mayan architecture as well in the background.
It's so clean.
So many like little personal emblems as well.
Everything that she does is personal.
Yeah.
So even in an image where it's primarily focusing on countries and places and like mechanics, it's always loops back to how it affects her in her life. Diego was afraid of Frida's growing depression and arranged for her and Lucien to use a local lithography workshop to keep busy. So he was like, this is getting too emotional for me. Go hang out with your friend.
Go do something.
This is a lot for me, actually.
This is about me now.
During her time at the print shop, she produces one lithograph called Frida and the Abortion. Some titles say Frida and the Miscarriage. The title kind of changes. She worked really hard on this. Wow. Lithography was difficult for her, but she did accomplish one pretty incredible print. The body is split into a dark half and a light half, representing two halves of her psyche. On the dark side, she holds a palette reminiscent of a newborn, implying that art making was and must suffice as her means of bringing life into the world. Another way she coped was through her many dolls and pets. She had a collection of dolls she'd care for as therapy. She also had dogs, monkeys, cats, parrots, doves, an eagle, and a deer.
An eagle?
Yeah.
This is some Cinderella-ass shit.
Yeah. Yes.
She is Mexican Cinderella.
The monkeys and parrots in particular often made it into Frida's portraits.
I love that so much.
She also tended to her garden vigorously, finding satisfaction in new growth to represent her obsession with fertility. She painted Me and My Doll. It is presumed that she had another miscarriage before she painted this because in stark contrast to a typical post-birth scene where a mother is fawning over her new baby, it's very warm, it's full of love, Frida sits coldly on a bed parallel to an unnerving life-size baby doll. It is plastic and lifeless. The barrenness of the landscapes come to represent her own barrenness.
Oh my God.
After Henry Ford Hospital, she's creating all of these dark paintings. Her mother passes away.
Oh my God.
Yes. And her paintings, it appears as though Frida has been sucked dry. She painted my birth after this.
Oh my God.
It is pretty intense of an image. Belle, you okay?
What the fuck, Frida?
So it obviously, it's for those who are not watching, it's a pretty graphic depiction of a body, a pregnant body with the top half, so shoulders up, covered in a white sheet, giving birth to Frida Kahlo, who looks to be pretty fully formed. It looks like she's giving birth to an adult version of Frida. So this is referencing themes of motherhood, obviously, trauma and grief, and it is quoted as being one of the most awesome images of childbirth ever made. And when I say awesome, I mean like awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Truly.
As Diego was rushing to finish his headlines, Frida was interviewed for the Detroit News. She was painting a half-length self-portrait at this time, which seems to suggest that she's getting back on her feet a little bit and she's becoming a little bit more self-assured after all of this trauma and grief. And the headline, which I think is hilarious, is "Wife of the Master Mural Painter Gleefully Dabbles in Works of Art."
What?
Gleefully dabbles?
Gleefully dabbles.
What the fuck? And now Diego Rivera is the husband of Frida Kahlo.
Truly.
Wow. I am gobsmacked. I mean, I'm not surprised, but it's so disrespectful.
It's insane.
Dabbles?
Well, at this point, she still wasn't well known as we know her. Like, she hadn't hit that point of fame yet. But every time I see that,
it's just
like post so on Instagram, I repost it. It's crazy. Yeah, at this time, it was impressive for Frida to have even been photographed and posted in a newspaper of this level. So she didn't really care. And in the article, she's quoted as saying, "Of course, he does pretty well for a little boy, but it is I who am the big artist."
Period.
So she knew. Like, she was sort of putting it on.
For a little boy.
Frida, despite her gnarly painting subjects and very dark, deep, raw paintings, she did carry a sense of humor with her everywhere she went. One of Frida's pastimes was the game of cadavre exquise. It was, I think it's exquis. It's a surrealist technique designed to explore the mystique of the accident. So basically, you fold a piece of paper into different sections, and one person draws on the top fold, and then they flip it, and the other person draws without seeing what the person before made, and then you unfold it at the end, and it's this like random
assortment.
Yeah.
I used to do that on register with people all the time with receipt paper.
Frida would always try and evoke the most insane reactions out of people. So she would always draw like genitalia and sexual organs and like crazy things going on in these games at dinner parties. So she was kind of always known as like the fun. She's just crazy.
She's just a crazy girl.
She's a crazy girl. Frida and Diego were bouncing around America still at this time, eventually landing in New York. And Frida was still so desperate to return to Mexico. She was very frustrated at Diego and her work at this time. She threw one of her self-portraits into the garbage, saying that it was rotten and horrible, but luckily a few of her friends saved it. In My Dress Hangs There, her signature, which I think is like one of her most insane paintings ever. Her signature outfit is floating on a blue hanger in New York, implying that though her shell is in New York, the real Frida is elsewhere. In this piece, she also mocks North American ideals. She mocks the love of competitive sports by placing a toilet up on top of a pedestal with a golf trophy on it. She sneaks a big red S around a crucifix in a stained glass window, and it becomes a $sign.
Where is that?
Whoa, that is crazy.
Oh, in the church back there.
A red ribbon links the church, Federal Hall, and Wall Street together.
Yes, God. Dude, I love this
She's
shit.
eating them up.
I know.
I also love the ribbon. The ribbon is
such a good motif. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so good.
She is a genius.
Truly. And this is just like, I like how she's coming in and as someone who is like an outsider to New York, she's able to just clock them immediately. Immediately, it seems. And she just made this, she just called it how it was.
My dress hangs there.
That's so good.
She highlights how big business was thriving while the swarming figures below are left out. The city's heart is a big telephone pole on top of an apartment building with a tangle of black wires connecting everything and everyone.
Wow.
She also highlights the damage of human waste, painting flowers, toys, and human entrails overflowing out of a garbage can.
Oh, that's what that is? Ew, I love that.
Diego, despite his wife begging, like she is so distressed. She's had a hard year. He does not want to go back to Mexico, and he's being a whiny baby about it. In fact, during one of his and Frida's intense fights, he takes his old painting of a desert cacti and screamed, "I don't want to go back to that," before ripping it to shreds. Frida was terrified and furious. She thought it was an act of hate against Mexico and took it very personally.
Well, she was born with Mexico, so...
Diego only relented when he was broke and exhausted. So only when he had no money was he like, fine, I guess we can go back to Mexico. The two returned and moved into the two modern houses linked in the center by a bridge, which is their iconic house. It's like two pillars linked together, pretty representative of them as people in their relationship. Diego's house was bigger, obviously, but Frida's was compact and beautiful with a spiral staircase leading to a quaint studio space and bath upstairs.
Wow.
With the return to Mexico and her new home, one could figure that Frida would be very happy. However, after a year of not painting at all, the reveal of a few small nips completely destroyed that idea. This painting is gruesome and violent. It's based off of a newspaper story of a drunken man who stabbed his girlfriend 20 times. When he was questioned, he proclaimed himself innocent and tried to downplay his actions, saying, "But I only gave her a few small nips."
And she died?
Yes.
What the fuck?
Frida's response to this was to paint the immediate aftermath of the murder in all of its gory detail. This violence cannot just be brushed away. She uses a lot of green yellows, which she used to represent insanity, sickness, and fear, to contrast the red blood, which continues onto the painting's frame, as if the crime could not be contained to one painting.
Oh, wow.
It's also an act of transition between fiction to fact, reminding us that this event was real. She chose to paint this story because she related to it. She said that she felt she had been murdered by life. All of her dreams of building a new, harmonious life with Diego were completely ruined because at this point, he had begun an affair with her younger sister, Christina. And that is where we're going to pick up next week.
Shut the
with the
front door.
No way,
of
dude.
Frida Kahlo.
Does everyone just hate her? You know what I'm saying?
What the
That's so nasty.
freak.
What?
It made my arms go numb. I was so...
Christina, another person to kill.
Christina, asshole.
Diego is no longer a 9.5.
I'd say 15 out of 10.
He's
15 out of
15
10.
and so is she.
Can you
Sorry.
believe that?
Not
So
Frida,
true.
Christina.
And this is the same sister that in the beginning, they were like running around holding hands in the orchard together. They were laughing over the dinner table together. They were like, that's her sister. How
That's
could
like her
you
childhood
do that?
best friend.
She just had such a hard time. And then she comes back. She's like, oh, thank God I'm back
Finally,
in
I'm
my
in
home
Mexico.
country.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
And it's worse too because he ruined a place that was supposed to be her sanctuary and the place that she loved more than anything. And he just kind of was like, I can't help myself.
Why do people want to have sex with him?
We're going to talk about it more.
He's so disgusting looking.
He's so awful.
He's so rude.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I hate to leave us on that note, but we're going to come back charged next week.
We're going to come back fired up.
I'm angry now.
I know. I'm asshole meter.
Punch a wall.
Christina asshole meter. I'd say 15 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How could you do that to your sister?
How could you do that to your sister who's been through nothing but horribleness?
How old was Christina at this time?
She was younger than Frida.
She's probably jealous.
She was like, yeah.
I mean,
Frida's
her art is
so
incredible.
Powerful. Yeah.
And beautiful.
Isn't that insane?
That is insane.
We'll be back next week with the continuation and conclusion of Frida Kahlo, but she's just she was worth 2 episodes.
She deserved
of course,
so
truly.
much better.
I could do like a whole podcast just on her.
I think
She's
so interesting.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
She's so cool. And her work is crazy. If you're not watching the slides, I would recommend it because it's like her work is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
If you want to vent with us about this horrifying cliffhanger, we're on Instagram and we have
happy to hear.
Yeah.
Happy to share in your pain.
I'm sure my story will be full of hate for this evil toad man.
Yeah.
Toad.
Another shout out to Mia's mom. Hope you enjoyed this one.
Tell us how we did. Did we do better?
Shout out to my dad. Thanks for listening. Love you.
Yay, Belle's dad.
Yay.
What's his name?
Jason.
Hey, Jason.
Shout out to Rebecca.
Is that your mom?
Yeah.
Rebecca Landrum.
Becky.
Wait, no.
Landrum.
Wait, yeah.
Rebecca Landrum,
Rebecca Landrum.
And Mia's mom's name is
Maggie.
Maggie.
Hey.
Shout out to our parents. We love you guys. All right, bye.
See you next week. Bye-bye.